If you've ever wondered whatever became of me, I'm living on the air in Cincinnati, WKRP. Got kind of tired of packing and unpacking, town to town, up and down the dial. Maybe you and me were never meant to be, just maybe think of me once in a while. I'm at WKRP in Cincinnati.
Oklahoma originally was a 17-point favorite in this game, but since the line has dropped a little bit to 15.5 points. Let me ask you something, Oklahoma Sooner fans. How are you feeling about your team right now? On one hand, have to feel good because they're 3-0. Obviously a better start to this season than the one last year, where at this time a year ago, you were getting a little bit irritated, and after the Miami game in which Oklahoma lost to have their second loss of the season, yeah, it went to just pure darn frustration. This year, of course, 3-0, a pretty good chance in my opinion for the Sooners to go 4-0 entering the Big 12 opener next week, and it's a big one against the Texas Longhorns. On one hand, I feel pretty good about the team's situation, especially special teams. On the other hand, though, you really can't get a true feel for the squad as far as who they are. Meaning, the Utah State game, we thought it was going to be a blowout. It wasn't. It was close. Florida State game, a lot of people, including yours truly, thought it was going to be close. Even a few thought that Florida State could pull up the upset. Yeah, right, because Oklahoma blew Florida State out. And then just this past week, although I didn't hear too many people calling for an OU blowout, most of the so-called experts thought Oklahoma would win comfortably. But is a 3-point win really comfortable? No, the game had a lot of drama in that fourth quarter, but Oklahoma does get the W. So, if you believe the odds makers, Oklahoma should have no trouble in this game, taking on a Cincinnati team that so far, even though we knew it was going to be tough without quarterback Tony Pike, without their outstanding receiver Marty Gilliard, both of them moved on, and without head coach Brian Kelly, who's at Notre Dame, there's no question a lot of people thought that Cincinnati would have a challenging season. But I think a lot of people weren't counting on them having 2 losses entering this game against the Sooners. Of course, only scoring 14 points at Fresno to open the season, and that loss 28-14, and then getting shellacked this past week against North Carolina State on national television. Good news for Cincinnati, though, they've had 2 extra days to prepare for the game since that game was played the previous Thursday. So, you're looking at the Bearcats, you're looking at a team that, no question, is a little bit new up front, especially at the tackles. And, of course, they're new as far as defense goes too. The secondary has had a rough go of it. So if you're looking at Oklahoma, and even though it's a road game and we've documented several times in the past the difficulties Oklahoma has had on the road, this is basically how I look at things. Last year, Oklahoma's road difficulties could be attributed to the fact that their offense, simply put, was out of sync. Against BYU, only scoring 1 touchdown. Against Miami, only scoring 2 touchdowns. Against Tech, they score a meaningless touchdown in the fourth quarter in that beatdown that the Red Raiders administered to the Sooners. And then Nebraska scoring no touchdowns against that great Husker D. And of course, Landry Jones had 5 turnovers. So as you could tell, so much of Oklahoma's success on the road will be predicated upon Landry Jones and his ability to play well away from the city of Norman. He did that last year in the bowl game against Stanford, but otherwise he was largely ineffective. This Cincinnati defense, in my opinion, doesn't really scare me. Landry Jones will have an opportunity to enter next week's Texas game with a ton of momentum, and he'll be able to do that as long as he can avoid the big mistakes. No question, Cincinnati, as Dennis Green, the former Minnesota Vikings head coach, might say, they're not the team that we thought they were. Okay? We'll crown them. I'm getting carried away here. But the bottom line is that Cincinnati, this should not be much of a challenge for Oklahoma. If it is a challenge, it's because Oklahoma will let it be a challenge. They're simply the more talented team, simply more of the complete team that Cincinnati is. Thank goodness that Cincinnati does not run the triple option threat like Air Force did last week for lots of success. But still, I think if you're a Sooner fan, the basic thing is I'm sure you feel good, but you're guarded at the same time. If Oklahoma, and we'll talk about this in a second too, just focuses on the Bearcats, focuses on Cincinnati and not Texas the following week, then things should be fine at Paul Brown Stadium come Saturday. Let's talk about the 4 keys to the ball game. Before we talk about the 4 keys to the ball game, I do want to show one piece of footage for you. This was from the Fresno State game a few weeks ago, talking about even though Cincinnati is experienced at the guards, the tackles are another story for the Bearcats. Here's one instance where Cincinnati really got exploited. A big focus of emphasis for the Bearcats this season, they knew, would be the play of their inexperienced tackles. And after watching this play, you'll understand why. Now, Fresno looks like they might be blitzing on this play. But as I forward the play and then freeze it, you can tell he's going to back off. That means you're only going to have 4 down linemen for Fresno pursuing this guy right here, that's Zach Collaros, the Bearcat quarterback. And you have 5 down linemen, so everything should be taken care of, right? Wrong. The right tackle has a bit of a lapse because there's too much focus on this tackle right here and not enough focus or any focus on the defensive end. Because as I forward the play and then freeze it, bam, I'm not sure what the tackle is doing for the Bearcats because the guard already has this guy engaged. The defensive end in the meantime is going to be able to pursue Collaros, and Collaros has to get rid of the ball a little bit sooner than he would like. The emphasis on this is because the receiver for Cincinnati, which in this case is the running back, is not going to have any blocking whatsoever. Bam, I'm going to freeze it right there because you can see the Fresno defensive back, he's going to have clear sailing toward the receiver, which I said is the running back. Nobody to block. It's too late for this Cincinnati player to make a block because, bam, play over, loss of yardage. Okay, now we can talk about the 4 keys to the game. Key number 1, OU defense, make it a sack party. Now, the Bearcats this season really haven't shot themselves in the foot with turnovers. As a matter of fact, Zach Collaros has not thrown any interceptions. On the other hand, they've had a hard time protecting him, and Cincinnati has given up 15 sacks already this season. That's 5 per game. Oklahoma defensive front will have a wonderful opportunity, especially with Beal and Alexander at those defensive ends, to make an impact. If they can do that early in the game and put Cincy in an early hole, that could only help Oklahoma's cause on the offensive side. So Cincinnati, so far this season, has not shown the ability to protect Collaros. Key number 2 to this game, in my opinion, for Oklahoma, and that is be aware of the Cincy receivers. DJ Woods, Armon Benz. These guys have hands that do not drop the ball, okay? Just because you don't have Marty Gilliard there anymore for Cincinnati doesn't mean that Cincy still isn't a dangerous team when it comes to receptions. Here's an instance last week against North Carolina State in which you must respect the speed of the Bearcat receivers. For the Oklahoma Sooners to prevent an upset from happening on Saturday, they have to have all their bases covered, especially when it comes to pass defense. In last week's loss to North Carolina State, Cincinnati gets a huge play in the first half because North Carolina State was not focused. The Wolfpack are going to have 7 players, that's right, 7, defend the pass on this particular play. But just because they have 7 doesn't mean that they're going to be able to defend Cincinnati's passing game, and I'll show you why. As I forward the play, you're going to be able to see that Cincinnati is running with 5 receivers. I'm going to stop it right about here. Collaros gets enough time to throw. Watch this guy right here, the linebacker for the Wolfpack. He thinks he's going to have support, but in actuality, DJ Woods, one of Collaros' favorite targets, is going to get free. Oklahoma must be able to respect the receivers of Cincinnati. Just because there's no Marty Gilliard there anymore, he's playing for the Rams now, doesn't mean that Cincinnati can't hurt you with big playability. The receivers for Cincinnati are quick, they're fast, and as you can tell on that play, they're reliable for Collaros. Key number 3 in this game, Landry, let it fly. It's that simple. Jones last season, not too bad of a game against Kansas. of course, the bowl game, Landry Jones excelled against Stanford. But other than that, Landry Jones on the road was pathetic in 2009. Oklahoma lost those games to Miami, to BYU, to Nebraska, and to Texas Tech because of the ineffective play of Landry Jones. Now, granted, in the case of Texas, in the case of BYU, I don't think he was counting on playing in the game, and neither did anybody else. But he did, and it was basically a rough day at the office for Landry. This Cincinnati defense does not bear the resemblance of a Texas or a Nebraska. This is a defense that has been very vulnerable against the pass, so I would be surprised if Landry had a rough day against Cincinnati. So all Landry has to do is play smart, and I would not be surprised to see the Sooners run more of those plays where the running backs are involved as receivers. We saw that once again last week with DeMarco Murray, and we also saw it with Moses Madu. Moses has terrific ability, but can't drop the ball. So I would think that the Oklahoma running backs will play, once again, an integral part in Landry's passing attack. And number 4, remember OU, you're in Cincinnati, you're not in Dallas, okay? A lot of people are already talking about the OU-Texas game. Let them talk about it, all right? You lose to Cincinnati, and the Oklahoma-Texas game, from the Oklahoma side of it, loses a lot of luster, okay? Keep the main goals in mind, but don't think ahead to the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. That's October 2nd. It's going to be there. Texas will be there. But September 25th, you better focus on the Bearcats, because you know Cincinnati is not just going to come in there for a Saturday stroll. This is one of those games, maybe the game on their schedule, at least out of conference, that they have been waiting for a long time. To get a marquee opponent to come to their home city, and you can bet that Cincinnati will be ready to play. OU better be ready to play as well. One of my subscribers, Thunder Sooner, said, "Do not look ahead." He messaged that to me. You know what? Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you. No question, Oklahoma can't be looking into October. Need to finish September with a bang. Final thoughts on this game. Yes, it is a home slanting game for Cincinnati, and yes, we've documented Oklahoma's difficulties on the road, but we've also attributed that with the lack of offensive consistency and resulting in those losses. Cincinnati's defense is not terrific, and honestly, I cannot see Cincinnati pulling off the upset. Now, that isn't to say that Cincinnati couldn't pull off the upset. That is, if Oklahoma has an off day. Simply meaning turnovers, penalties, blowing assignments on defense. Yes, the upset bug could bite Oklahoma. I don't think it's going to in this case. I think that they are focused to play the Bearcats, and I think Oklahoma will win the game 34-17. By the way, as far as the kicking situation goes, Jimmy Stevens will start this week for Oklahoma. Played wonderfully last week, made both of his field goals, and knock on serious wood, but Oklahoma special teams were, they had struggled in even 2 years ago. It looks like special teams is becoming a big-time weapon for Oklahoma. So that's something for Sooner fans. I know they were a little bit nervous about entering the season, including me, but so far special teams have been vital. They were vital last week against Air Force. Probably saved the Sooners, as a matter of fact. So 34-17, that's my prediction, OU to win and to cover those 15.5. My post-game show, keep in mind, will be on the air early Sunday morning. So check back Sunday morning for my thoughts on how Oklahoma did against the Bearcats. 34-17, Oklahoma to remain undefeated. Boomer Sooner.